Investigations are underway after the parts of several dismembered swans have been found along a canal in
Location redacted.
RSPCA officers and police said they had seen a rise in reports in the last year of swans being killed, possibly for food. 5 birds have been found dead on the banks of the
Location redacted.
canal. Heads and feet have been found with the body missing, and there was a report of a swan in a bin bag on
Location redacted.
Common. Officers have been unable to find the people responsible. PC,
Name redacted.
wildlife crime officer for
Location redacted.
police, said, "We have had various reports of parts of swans being found on the riverbank and on the cycleway, and it's quite clear that something is not quite right. Swans are protected birds, and the Crown retains the right to ownership of all unmarked mute swans in open water. They are seen as a delicacy in some parts of the world. But it is illegal to kill swans in this country, and anyone found to be doing so faces a fine of up to $5,000 or a 6-month jail sentence."
Name redacted.
Branch manager at RSPCA
Location redacted.
said officers had been unable to gather enough evidence to bring about prosecutions. She said, "It is extremely unpleasant finding the birds, and it is impossible to know how many have been killed so far. But it is a real big concern for us. The longer these incidents continue, these people will keep getting away with it, and the more damage they are causing to the swans in the area." The RSPCA and police have urged residents who notice suspicious activity along the canal to report it immediately. I used to go out for long walks along the canal next to my flat, waving to the canal boats and watching the swans. I used to hear children laughing in playgrounds across the canal from my sitting room. I used to buy lunch for the vagrant who used to live under the bridge. I used to call him Hobo Baggins. He used to refuse to tell me his real name in case they found him and took him back to run some funky science on him and hatch aliens out of his belly. Yes, he used to be one of those, but friendly enough. It's quiet now. There haven't been swans here for over 2 years. A lot of canal boats have been abandoned, marked with a red council notice stuck on the doors, and you rarely see anyone passing through. After the swans, the town started getting covered in missing pet posters. Dogs and cats mostly. One time a horse. They never stayed up for long. Not after the owners found the body parts, dumped around the bins after the bags had been ripped open. I remember back then, I'd find foxtails out the back of my flat. The fox calls at night stopped soon after that. As cruel as it sounds, I was a little glad at the time. Those calls were creepy. I'd do anything to hear them again. The police started to investigate this in connection to the swans. They couldn't conclude what attacked them. The bits of the animal that were left were usually too small to discern any teeth or claw marks from. At least that's what the newspapers said. People in town got scared to go out at night, convinced something had escaped the zoo. The police debated introducing a curfew. There were a lot of animal control guys around. Then there just weren't. Sitting at home one evening about a year ago, I got thinking about it. There had always been roadkill around town. You'd often see a discarded squirrel carcass when walking through the park, bird feathers scattered around hedgerows, the remains of a duck stuck in the reeds. Authorities only noticed a predator when the swans were all gone. Before, that was probably people's cats, right? or the foxes. I don't think so anymore. I think whatever it was, it needed bigger prey. Bigger prey. I called the police the day after to report Hobo Baggins missing, when I didn't see him on my usual walk along the canal. They said they couldn't do anything. He could have just moved on to somewhere else. And who would blame him? I didn't even have a real name to report anyway. Months went by, and the nights got quieter and quieter. There's no sounds of birds to wake you at dawn. There aren't even drunkards stumbling about after a night out. Most of the pubs and restaurants have shut down. People just don't feel safe leaving home anymore. The police are still investigating, but I never see them out on the street any more than anyone else. It's a pretty lonely town to walk around in the last few weeks. A lot of people have moved out. The only ones who stay can't afford to leave, like me. I would if I could, but I'm barely covering bills as it is. You only see people out during the day, and they usually drive. By sundown, there's no one on the streets. All the curtains are closed, and people keep their lights off. They put their bins as far from the house as they can, without blocking the paths or the road. By morning, the bags will be ripped to shreds. Anything edible in them will be gone, and anything inedible is chewed up and unidentifiable. The streets are full of crap people have thrown out. The council have stopped sending bin men. I phoned them, but the only response I get is that this service is suspended due to department restructuring. Sorry for the inconvenience. Last week, I got 2 phone calls. Any other place, any other time, they would have been a godsend. Instead, they just add to the growing dread shadowing the town. The first was my boss. Don't bother coming in anymore. We're shutting down. I'll try to get you your last pay slip as soon as I can. And he paused. I'll try to get you some redundancy pay, too, to make up to 3 months' pay. Use it to get out of town. I never got that money. The second call was from my landlord. He just left a voicemail. Hey, it's...
Name redacted.
I've canceled your direct debit. Don't give me money anymore. I feel bad taking it. Just get out of town. We all know that's what we should do. Maybe if I had ever gotten that money from my boss, I could have gotten away. Not that I had anywhere to go. In hindsight, maybe just walking out of here would have been better than staying. I took my last walk along the canal on Tuesday. As I approached the bridge, I noticed something in the water. A rib cage. Practically picked clean. It looked like it had been floating there for a while, too. I hoped it didn't belong to who I was thinking, but I knew. You just know sometimes. I called the police. I already knew what I would hear. The police on the end of the phone made an incident report, told me that I couldn't know who it belonged to, not to jump to conclusions, an officer will investigate. I knew no one would. We both sounded exhausted, worn down, weighed down by the knowledge that nothing could be done. We went through the motions, trying to maintain a sense of normality. He wouldn't even tell me his real name. I was talking to my neighbor yesterday. He's in the same boat as me. No friends, no family, nowhere to go. He tried to convince me to leave. Pretty girl like you could get themselves far away from here. Don't need no money when you look like that. I scoffed. There's no one left here to take me anywhere. It's getting closer to the houses, I said to him as we stared out our first-floor windows over the canal. Yeah, you hear those sounds it makes? I ain't heard sounds like that from no fox or badger. He continued to stare out the window, slowly shaking his head. Nah, they don't make sounds like that. I looked down out the window. The The trees along the canal bank had scratches on them, and broken branches, like something big had been climbing up there. Did you see the window on the ground floor? Yep. It had been ripped from the frame. The brickwork underneath had been gouged out, leaving a big gap in the wall. The insides of that flat had been trashed. Smashed furniture, blood, hair, chunks of meat and bone all over the front room. Who lived there again? His hands trembled as he spoke. That dad who looked after his little girl, remember? I walked her to school once when he was ill. I said nothing in response. George, my neighbor said. I called him George. He kept his eyes fixed out on the window. I was going to ask why, but why bother? Last night was the worst night. The cries and howls were nothing like I had ever heard before. I had left my window open, but the blinds were shut. It was just too warm to sleep. Just as I was drifting off, I heard heavy footfalls and a snorting sound. I froze with fear. I could feel my eyelids peeling back into my skull, and my whole chest felt cold with fear. My legs and arms retracted into the fetal position. Then I just waited with my back to the window. After several minutes, the whole room shook as a heavy thud hit the wall behind me. A growl reverberated through me as the scraping started. It rapidly became more pronounced, more vicious. The scraping, snarling, scratching. I went through the motions of reassuring myself. It's the wind, it's the trees, it's the rain, it's anything except what it sounds like. This is it, I thought. This is my night. I really thought it was going to get in. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I hoped that it might have all been a bad dream, a nightmare. I went out to check on my neighbor. His door was locked up, and he wasn't answering. I went outside to see if I could see him through the window. Then I saw them, outside my window. I saw where the scratches had come from. Big foot-long claws under my window. Under my window on the first floor. There were big footprints in the flower bed. Not that they looked like anything I had seen before. I'm scared this time. Not just creeped out, not just worried. Really scared this time. I called the police again. I didn't even get an officer this time, just an automated message.
Location redacted.
Police station is unable to process calls at this time. We advise residents to stay with family or friends away from...
Location redacted.
If possible, if this is not possible, please remain indoors and barricade your home. Avoid unnecessary journeys. Under no circumstances leave your home at night. Do not investigate any strange noises or events. Keep calm. We are investigating. Are you fuck? You know, I'm glad I haven't seen it. I'm glad it's only been scratches and noises and footprints in the flower beds. What if I saw it and it couldn't be unseen? I'm used to living with fear now. I don't want to live with nightmares. Whatever it is, it's getting bigger. How does something get that big without anyone seeing it? So here I am. I'm sure this is my last day here, while I still have a means to communicate with the outside world. I'm telling you all of this, all of what happened here, about how easy it was for me to stick my head in the sand and hope it all wasn't happening, until I pulled my head up and realized I was trapped. So here's the last thing anyone will hear me say. A warning. If you hear of a quiet town, famous for its beautiful canals and swans, don't go. All the swans are gone.
Ah!